Hey everybody, welcome to Both Sides Now TV. We are live here on Facebook and on YouTube with the amazing Kelly. Hey Kel.
Hi, John. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Both Sides Now TV. So glad you could join us today. Well, we are waiting for Shirley. Dr. Shirley is going to join us in a minute or two or three or five. I'm not really sure. She had a patient that lasted a little longer, and she's going to jump on as soon as she can. But I thought what I would do today. Well, first of all, John, how are you? Where are you?
I am in Ohio. Do you hear me okay?
I can hear you
All
just
right,
fine.
great. Yeah, so I'm in Ohio with my mother for her hospice care and visiting family. So it's been an emotional roller coaster, but I can't thank everyone enough for all their prayers
Yeah.
and support.
Everybody's been really terrific, haven't they?
Yeah, you especially.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, well, and everybody. I'd like to thank all the
Yeah,
listeners out there for sending prayers to John and his mom. Been
yeah,
really, really supportive and so appreciated.
yeah.
Well, and I am in my farm in Los Angeles. I'm in my farm in Wisconsin. So
Did you
you're in
bring the farm to
Ohio?
LA?
Oh my
Yeah, I'm in
God.
Ohio with 30-degree weather, and you're in Wisconsin with how much weather? What's the weather there?
About 30.
About 32. Yeah, okay.
But
Yeah,
yesterday in Los Angeles, it was 39.
that's crazy. I know at one point
Crazy.
it was warmer here than it was in LA, which I think is just unbelievable
It's
because
unbelievable.
they're getting a cold snap. So
Isn't that weird?
yeah,
Wow.
and I
How
think we
about
have Shirley on. Let's get Shirley
Cheryl?
on. Let's bring her on. 1 second here.
Then
Shirley, are you
Hi,
there?
I am here. Hello.
Excellent.
hi, Cheryl.
Hi, Kelly. I heard the 30-degree weather, and yet we were freezing yesterday, all weekend. And John, you're in Ohio. How's your mom?
I am. Yeah, so mom's doing a little bit better each day. So I want to, like I said, I'm thanking everybody for their prayers and support because it's really
Yeah.
helping. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good,
Thank
good.
you.
Gosh. Wow.
So, welcome, everybody. I'm sorry I'm running late today.
We're glad
And
you're
we
here.
have, thank you so much. We have a wonderful show, don't we? With a very honored, special guest. Are you
Very
going to tell
special.
us? Are you going to tell everybody who it is, Kel?
I am going to tell everybody who it is. But first, I thought we would do the astrology.
Oh, that's right.
And
Let's do that.
then we will
Let's
go
do that.
into this. And then I'll introduce
I'm gonna
the
take
special guest.
I'm gonna take a second to move this light out of my eyes. So please start the
You got it.
I
the
will. Well,
energy stuff going on.
we're just going into December right now. And December's going to be a culmination of quite the year we've had as we go into 2020. I want to talk about, I'm going to start with talking about we have an eclipse on December 26th, and it's something that I will talk about for the next few weeks. In Vedic astrology, which is really what I'm using for this eclipse, it's in Sagittarius. And Western eclipse, they're saying it's in Capricorn. But the reason I really am going towards the Vedic approach in this is because this powerful eclipse is about truth and spirituality, and it brings a special awareness into the world. And you're going to start feeling this as in December. December has this ability to awaken spiritually people,
Hmm.
and it brings about a positive thinker, changing the way we think, changing the way we feel. It's transformational. It's a transformational month, and it's a transformational eclipse that comes up. And we have so many aspects in December. It's unbelievable. But if you look at 18 and a half years ago, where were you 18 and a half years ago? Well, that was 2001. Of course, we had 9/11, but everybody's life changed. And that's the kind of change I'm talking about going forward
Oh,
as we get into the end of December and into January and for the year 2020. It's transformational power change. It's old systems um, clearing out and new systems coming in. So, spirituality, truth will be huge things that we'll be talking about. Also, there's so many planets in flux right now, but there's a full moon on December 12th, and that is going to be in Gemini, and that's seriously challenges everybody. It's also during a rare conjunction. It's a very powerful time. This full moon on December 12th, and we'll talk more about it next week. And additionally, on December 12th, Chiron, the wounded healer, goes direct. So all of these things are happening. But today on December 2nd, Jupiter enters Capricorn. Now, that only happens once a year. Jupiter only changes once a year into another sign. So it's one of the most important transits of the year, actually. And what makes this one particularly good is that Jupiter brings expansion, it brings growth, it brings hope, it brings faith, it brings trust. So all of these aspects that are going on should make the next few weeks, like a roller coaster again, challenging, but thoroughly rewarding. Okay?
Well, that's nice to hear that it's going to be thoroughly rewarding, because
I think so.
when you first started talking about everything going on, I mean, my analytical mind was saying, "Oh, it's going to be a clusterfuck."
Yeah.
in
Well, that too.
December.
Well, that too. That too.
Nothing
But this is
analytical about
different.
that.
No, but this is really a very transformational time. Everything as we have known for this last 18 years or whatever, 18 and a half years, it's going to change. And so 2020 is going to be really powerful time for all of us.
That's very exciting. I mean,
It
this
is.
year, it seems like every month that you've talked about, it's always been kind of learning new lessons or letting go of things. And it's been really kind of, I don't want to say a struggle, but a lot of
struggle, a lot of work, a lot of struggle. You know
this
what?
year. And it's nice. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and I think that's why you and I had come to this decision to talk about forgiveness, which kind of plays into this truth and spirituality. It's an important topic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was funny because one of our listeners had suggested it. I guess you and I had done a show on it years ago.
A while ago. Yeah. Yeah.
And a listener suggested it. And I had to really work with myself and with you. Do I really want to go there? Because forgiveness is a funny topic in the sense that everybody has an opinion about it. It's not easy breezy. Everybody is going to have a sense of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a nice starting off point is how we define forgiveness. To a lot of people, I think forgiveness is associated with taking someone off the hook, or it brings with it implicitly this idea that, okay, and what you did was okay.
Right.
The person that you're forgiving.
Right.
And that's not it at all.
No.
Certainly not in my definition. And I think that there's a reason why the two have been associated, I think. But I think that we need to redefine what forgiveness is. Certainly something we do for ourselves. It has nothing to do with us, with the message, it's okay what you did.
Right.
And so I think that's a nice starting point.
Oh, it's a great starting point. I think we should bring our guest in.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
since we're going to be talking about this. So I will introduce said guest. So Dr. Holiday Bean is our guest tonight. And Dr. Holiday, Doc Holiday, is a licensed clinical forensic psychologist who specializes in trauma, children, family therapy, and parent coaching. She utilizes a variety of techniques while in session, and her interpersonal style is very relational. When she is not chasing around her young son and new infant, baby girl, and 3 pets, Dr. Bean is an avid quilter, go figure, and crafter. She's a crafter and loves trying out new recipes. But most importantly, this is my daughter. Yay! Hi,
the best person in the world. Hi, sweetheart.
Hi, Shirley.
Oh my God, I'm so
Hi, Holiday.
to see you.
Thanks for
Thank you.
joining us.
How beautiful you are.
Thank you for letting me be here.
Well, Holiday wanted to be here when she said to me, Mom, what's your topic for Monday? I said, forgiveness. And she said, oh, I have some things to say about that.
I think my exact words were, I have very strong opinions about that.
Yes.
She did.
So
I think we're all coming from different generations, because I'm a different generation than you, Shirley, and I'm certainly a different generation from you, Holiday. So it's an interesting position to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And kind of see what the associations are.
Yeah.
How do you define forgiveness, Holiday?
So I actually had to look this up, and I'm about to sound like I started a graduation speech, but Webster's dictionary defines forgiveness as an act of letting go of anger and resentment. a secondary part, and I think this is where a lot of the cultural components come into play, is that it's also letting go of something. Like you forgive a debt. So for me, I always think of forgiveness as there's an aspect of I'm not only am I releasing anger, but then I'm letting go of what happened, but I'm also condoning what you did, saying it's okay. And as a old millennial, I have strong opinions.
Yeah. So in your definition, it is about telling the other person it's okay what you did.
Yeah, I think in the way I see it, or a lot of the way that my patients come when they have questions about forgiveness and should I, there's this push of letting go of what happened, and like it's more than just coming to terms with it. It's being okay with what happened. And a lot of the work that I do with my own patients is helping them recognize that you don't have to condone their behavior. And sometimes you don't actually have to forgive. Sometimes I really encourage people to hang out in not forgiving and not have this push. The other really interesting cultural piece that I'm coming from is that I now live in the South. I'm born and bred in LA, but I now live in Texas. And particularly here in the South, there is this huge push, because we're part of the Bible Belt, for forgive, forgive, forgive. You have to let it go or it's going to kill you. And I just don't think that's accurate.
Yeah. You know, it's I think that you can run into some trouble with yourself with part of the definition,
Sure.
you know, being, I'm saying it's okay what you did. You know, I think people are too quick to get to the forgiveness piece and don't give the anger and the disappointment and everything that it brings up enough validation and enough respect. Anger is such an important thing to respect and to let yourself feel and be with, until, you know, in my mind, that's what you work through, is to not feel angry. You can set a boundary, say, I never want to talk to that person ever again. But carrying any kind of activation from it, I think, hurts you. And the other person, they've most likely, if they've done something egregious, they've most likely moved on or haven't even given it a second thought.
But an interesting part from an evolutionary perspective is what does that anger do to you, and how does it help you and serve you from a survivalist perspective? So if you take someone, let's say you have a toxic relative who's been really...
Not me.
Or me. Or you, Shirley. Who's been difficult in your life, who's hurt you over and over. Sometimes that anger is almost like a shield, and is something to protect you, because oftentimes when we forgive, we then let them back into our lives. And then we're like Lucy with the football, and we keep getting kicked and kicked and kicked and kicked and kicked.
Well, I think that's where the boundary comes in, you know, unless, again, knowing yourself enough to know that if I completely forgive this person, I'm going to let them back in my life. And then I would explore that piece. Why would you let someone back in your life just because you've forgiven them? I mean, anger is life force. Anger necessarily has to be there in order for us to set a boundary against someone who's coming at us, whether it's with words, with actions, with behavior, right? So that has to be there. I don't know that it has to live on. When we think about, let's say we've worked through it, worked through the anger and stuff, and we're feeling pretty even. When we think about what they did, that brings it up. So that, in my mind, is a little bit different, because what they did is still awful. And forgiving means I don't have to feel it every day, in my mind. But when I think about it, it might upset me in that moment, because what they did was upsetting. So it's not about never feeling anger. I think that's impossible. It's like always feeling happy. You know, this idea that we have in our society that we should always feel happy. It's not about that either. I think it's impossible.
Katrina says, it took me years to figure out on how to forgive. So happy I did. My health improved and lots of doors opened for me, shifted my energy. And that's really true, a true statement.
Mhm.
Spiritually, we recognize our enemies, the people that have really harmed us, as teachers. And so, what have you learned from them?
Mhm.
What have you learned? And it's so interesting. Kahil Gibran, who wrote The Prophet, he said it's best to learn tolerance from the intolerant. Which I just love, because how else are you going to learn that? And I have always stated that this is a great school that we attend. It's a difficult school that we attend, this dimension. It's a tough school, and you're going to have those personality disorders. I mean, really, those are the ones to me that are the most difficult to forgive or to move on with, because they don't have empathy. For instance, it's almost easy to forgive somebody who may have harmed you or hurt you if they have empathy. But if somebody doesn't have empathy, it makes it a little tricky. So
Mhm.
what say you
Yeah.
guys? Do you agree with that?
Say that one more time.
If somebody does not, the person who's harmed you does not have empathy, it's tough to forgive. It's a tough one. So instead of forgiving, do we say like, for us as a spiritualist, I think, well, their soul's not really connected. This is honestly how I view it. They're not
Mhm.
really in the body. Their soul's not really connected. I can't let them back in. I pray for the soul. I mean, and not as a Southern Baptist Bible person, but
Right.
as a spiritualist, I think, oh, that soul is really in hurting, but I can't allow myself to get hurt again.
Mhm.
Well, and I think you can also, and maybe this is just a difference of words and semantics, but
Mhm.
I don't necessarily view forgiving someone as letting go.
Mhm.
But I happily will let something, I can move on and let go without holding on to that anger and resentment,
Okay.
because that is exhausting.
It's
But I
exhausting,
can't
right?
forgive what that person did.
Mhm.
I can't make it okay.
So
And
I think,
that's,
yeah, I mean, I think it might be semantics and how we define that word, because I agree with you. Not forgiving is in the way that you're using it. Someone means I'm setting a boundary and I'm not going to let that back in.
yeah.
But you work through to let go of the
Yeah.
anger and and the resentment that it brings, or the disappointment.
But I do appreciate what you said too. It's that you really have to honor the anger and resentment that's there and not try to rush through those feelings.
Oh, absolutely, because
And
they're
the
they're going to
culture
be
that yeah, well, and the culture we live in is you have to be happy, you can't be angry, and you need to forgive immediately.
exactly.
That's not a case. That's not reality.
Exactly.
You'll get there when you get there.
Absolutely. Fester into something else. I mean, I'm going to go actually to a 5-day training with Dr. Peter Levine on depression, aggression, and life force. And if we don't get in touch with our anger, we go into depression many times.
Mhm.
And anxiety sometimes can also be putting the lid on these feelings. Anger is seen as a 4-letter word, and it's not. It's life force. It's what we do with anger, how we
Mhm.
behave when we're angry, which can be a problem many times. But it allows us to set boundaries. If someone is coming at your child, that anger allows you to push them away. And it's so easily to think about doing it when it comes to our kids.
Mhm.
But when it comes to us, sometimes we have such a difficult time.
That's
Yeah.
very true. That's very true. And it's interesting too, from a spiritual standpoint, when you realize that when you forgive somebody, you're not condoning another's actions. That's where people get
Mhm.
stuck. You're actually setting
Yeah.
yourself free by forgiving them and accepting what happened, and maybe even accepting who they are.
Well, and I think that that's a great word. So maybe people, it would be helpful to think about forgiveness as just accepting what is and
Accepting what
making choices
happened.
for yourself. Right. And like Susie, I think, just put a message where she has a hard time with forgiveness because her family caused so much harm. So accepting someone for who they are, that's who they are, and choosing to set a boundary and not be around that anymore, I think is important. And then separately, what feelings did that bring up in me?
Right. And I like
You know.
that, that's, forgive and don't forget. That's the truth, or you'll get bit again.
Oh yeah.
God.
Oh,
Carol
absolutely.
Hernandez says, I haven't talked to my twin sister for 3 years. Twin sister. Now think about that, hot doctors. Twin sister. I can't do it again. She won't change, and it's my fault we still aren't talking. It hurts my heart. Oh, Carol, I so understand that. And I miss her so much, but can't keep walking into the fire again and again. All right, girls, how do we tackle this one? It's
but
just
that's
very
just it. I
familiar
mean,
sounding.
yeah. Yes, it is. But that's just it. I mean, is acknowledging and being, acknowledging what is and working through, kind of like you said, that's how I view it when I've worked through it and I'm able to get there, is people are on their own journey. I may not want to be part of their journey because of what they did. And that allows me to work through it myself.
And honoring those feelings of sadness and the grief that comes with it. So a lot of times grief comes with sadness because you recognize, particularly, I know a lot of people are writing in about, their childhoods were so painful, were so awful. And those are deep and powerful wounds that we can't, it's not necessarily about healing them. It's about incorporating them and using them and to make you a bigger and better person for who you are today.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
that's exactly it. Yeah.
Taking the space to grieve those experiences, though, and play around with the anger inside of the grief, I think can really help you validate those feelings and come to a better place of acceptance.
Absolutely. I think grieving is so important because you're grieving what isn't anymore, what used to be but isn't anymore, especially when it's a sibling that you choose not anymore, or a family member, or even a friend that you've had for many years.
Yeah.
Family members are really a tough one. Yeah, or a dear friend. That's very true too. Family members are tough. How does one deal with when you have a family member that's been pretty horrific?
It's a tough one because I think we're programmed to believe that, it's family. It's a blood relative. It's family.
Bingo.
But you earn your respect. And for someone with avoidant attachment, it becomes a little easier to say, if this person isn't nice to me, I don't care who they what title they have in my life.
It gets complicated because you are an avoidant and I'm an empath, so that makes it tough. And Holiday, you're an empath too. I mean, you're not an avoidant.
But I'm ambivalent, so I can swing from one to the other.
Yeah, I mean, but attachment style has nothing to do with empathy. I can feel somebody's pain, and I can even feel this particular person that I'm not talking to either, and sometimes it hurts a lot. But the avoidant attachment in me makes it so if that person happened to have the title of a family member or not, that doesn't come into play as much. That doesn't mean it wouldn't be hurtful. Of course, I have feelings, but we're so conditioned to believe, family is family, and blood is blood.
And everything they've done is you can forgive, you can move on from, you can get past.
Not if it's a personality disorder. I mean, I think what Carol just commented, where she had to stop talking to her twin sister because she kept walking. It sounds like her twin sister may have a personality disorder. They can never take any onus of anything. It's always everybody else's fault. And it's like walking into a pit of vipers. It's not just, they said something mean or they weren't sensitive. It's not the little stuff. I mean, don't stop talking to people, particularly relatives, because of silly things. I think that's an important thing to also acknowledge.
Yeah. Well, and I think recognizing too, you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself before you can put it on anyone else. So allowing yourself to have those feelings, feel your feelings, grieve, feel sadness, and also recognizing that part of your self-care routine is going to be having to step away from that person. And you have to weigh which side, it hurts when you're with them, but it also hurts when you're without them. Which one?
Right. Well, isn't this interesting? Yeah. So Carol is a mirror twin.
Oh, wow.
Now, right? She called in a couple of weeks ago, and Shirley, she's the one that I mentioned to you. You weren't on that show, and it was just fascinating. She has a mirror twin.
What's a mirror twin? That means that
identical. That the egg. It means that the egg literally split into two, and they are mirror images of each other.
Oh, wow.
It's like the
And-
tightest possible twin connection you can have,
And yet one is
Wow.
borderline and one is not.
which is probably
we
due to
don't know
birth
that.
trauma.
Yeah. We don't know that. So I don't want to diagnose someone I
fair.
haven't met, but I think
But if that were the
someone here-
case, tell us about that, Holiday. If that were the case.
Oftentimes, and Dr. Shirley can talk about this too, there's birth trauma can set some things into play between mother and baby that ends up turning into and playing out into personality disorders later
Mhm.
due to attachment
Yeah.
issues.
Right. Right. It's
So-
always
Temperament
attachment
also
issues.
plays into it, and a mirror image, mirror twin would not. Each mirror twin could be born with very different attachment issues, or very different temperaments. And so, if one was easier than the other, that could have also played into some of those characteristics.
Right. Wow. Thank you for that. So Rebecca says, isn't the process of forgiving to help you move forward? Yes. If you
Mhm.
don't you say somewhat stuck? Great
I
question.
actually disagree with that. I don't think you have to stay stuck. I think you have to feel comfortable with wherever you are in your own process, using
Mhm.
whatever words you feel comfortable with. For me, I don't like using the word forgiveness. I like coming to a place of acceptance of what the situation is and
Mhm.
feeling very present with that. And that is what propels me to be able to move forward. Other people may use the word forgiveness. To me, it's just such a loaded word that I just don't feel comfortable with it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I
Because-
don't think you have to forgive to be able to move forward. I think you have to come to a place of acceptance to be able to propel
And-
yourself forward.
Yeah. And I think acceptance can have the same process as someone who you forgive, in the sense of working through your own stuff,
Sure.
working through how what it brought up in you, what emotions
Mhm.
came, and then grieving, what used to be and what isn't anymore. Let's see, Shar is saying, as women, I think we are told to be nice and can't be angry, so we shove it down. Took a long time to believe my feelings are valid. Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's
very
absolutely
real.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
There was a study that I think, Kelly, you sent to me, the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley. They generally describe forgiveness as a conscious, deliberate decision to release feelings of resentment or vengeance towards a person or group who has harmed you, regardless of whether they actually deserve your forgiveness.
Mm.
So it's really, it's you do it for yourself. Accepting, just as you're saying, Holiday, you do it for yourself, not for the people who
Mhm.
did the egregious thing. It's really for yourself.
But it's on your own timeline. And it's not because someone else
Absolutely.
told you to do it.
Right.
And it shouldn't be done quickly, or you shouldn't hurry through it. It's absolutely on your own timeline. I'm glad that you said that, because it's an
Right.
important thing to remember. It might take people years.
Oh, and
that's okay.
I really like what Jennifer is saying. Take away the role of family and just try to look at them as a person. That's huge.
Exactly.
That's a great
Thank
idea.
you, Jennifer.
you.
That's so
Huge.
beautifully.
Yeah. It's very true.
And
Wow.
then you get to decide individually, as a person, do you want to spend time with them? Do you enjoy their company? Are they worthy of your forgiveness? Are they worthy of your time? Because it takes a lot of
Right.
time, effort, and energy for you to figure out how you want to move through that experience of forgiveness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Lynn says, I agree with Holiday. It's however you're comfortable, and then you move on. You don't have to forgive. Some things done are unforgivable. Right on,
Mhm.
Lynn. That's very true. Some things are just unforgivable. And so, but I
Yeah.
know spiritually what we say is forgiveness frees us to live in the present. It frees us, it allows us to move on. And I think from my generation, or from a different generation than you guys, certainly, I'm time becomes a lot more precious. Not that I'm so old, but I'm so old. But time does become more precious, and so a part of that me says, do I really want to go back and work out differences with some people,
Mhm.
or am I okay with just moving on? And
Yes.
because time is a real thing, but does take, and this dimension is fraught with bombs here, bombs there, bombs here, bombs there. It's a tough place to be, and we're humans having a spiritual experience.
Yeah.
We're spirits having a human experience. Sorry about that. I got that mixed up. But we're just having a human experience here. And I don't know if it's possible to fully, if somebody has really done you damage, if it's really possible to, I guess it is, to let go and move on, but it maybe in time, I don't know.
But
Can
again, go ahead. Go
Oh,
ahead.
can I go back to something you said earlier, Mom, about
Yeah.
can you forgive someone who has no empathy?
Yes.
Um, sometimes I actually think that that's easier to do than forgiving someone with empathy. Because if someone doesn't have empathy, you can come to a place of compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you got to really dig deep, like all the way to China in your well of compassion to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But if you can really look at them from this place of they don't know. They genuinely don't know. You're almost looking at them like a toddler did something. Again, doesn't condone their behavior,
Yeah.
doesn't allow them in it. You can come to a place of, as an empath yourself, of feeling sorry for them, compassion for them, feeling sad that they are unable to experience what empathy can provide.
Yeah.
And so in that way, you can kind of let go and move on, because then you grieve in a different way, because you no longer allow yourself to feel like they should know, because they can't.
I know.
They're
I know.
never going to get there.
So in a case like that, and you dig all the way to China with compassion, which I appreciate you saying, then what? Do you have a relationship again with them?
No,
Okay.
not at all. It goes back to the compassion is just as much for you as it is for them. But the boundary, as Dr. Shirley has said, is still there, because we're not going to be loosey with the football.
Yeah, I don't think forgiveness has anything to do with, am I going to bring them back into my life?
Yeah.
I think forgiveness is a very personal work and a very personal journey. Somebody was asking me how, I forgot what the question was, but how does forgiveness allow you? What does it do for you? And I think it allows you to not hold on to anger and hurt as much as possible. Again, when we think of that person, that will bring up emotions, but it's different. Emotions in the here and now that are transitory are different than something that's been festering, than a deep, deep wound and a deep, deep hurt. And I think that's the piece to work through, so you don't carry it with you. When you think of that person and the latest incident or whatever, then that's going to bring up, but you know, temporary fleeting emotions are different than a deep wound that you're still carrying with you. And it's very, very different. How does forgiveness help you heal? Yeah, that was what Rebecca was asking. I think it helps heal the, well, thank you, John. He's bringing up
Great book. Recommend this to my patients all the time.
Thank you. It helps you heal the emotions within yourself, so you're not carrying, this, because we too. When someone acts egregiously, I think it's important to look at, what assumption am I making, particularly if it's a parent. You usually interpret that as, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, and that's something really important to work through.
That's a tough one. Yeah. It seems
Yeah.
like a lifetime of anger and grieving for me, Susie says. I believe it. There are people that have those experiences, a lifetime of anger and grieving.
But you have to look at how much is that anger taking over your life and moving. And if you don't like the word forgiveness, choose the word acceptance. Once you've worked through your stuff. For me personally, I get to a place when I can only feel those feelings of anger for so long before they start to just feel so heavy on me, and I can't carry it around. And I will sometimes even do some visual work of putting in a balloon and just sending it on its way, and some active imagination to really give myself the space of letting it go, physically removing it from my shoulders. Because you're right, holding on to that anger doesn't help me. But I don't forgive that person in any way, shape, or form. I'm just in a place of acceptance of who they are and of what happened. And that allows me to move forward.
Yeah.
Joanne says, this person is past, and I still find it hard to forgive. They changed my path in life, I believe, by what they did to me as a child, and find it hard to forgive. I understand that, Joanne. You know,
And as you said, Mom, some things aren't forgivable.
some things aren't forgivable. And then I go back into a deeper spiritual place and say, you know, what did you come into this lifetime to learn? Did you come to learn forgiveness? Did you come to learn acceptance? Did you come to learn whatever? Because somebody who would have had these deep experiences when they were young or at any time, is this from a past life? Is this something that the soul came in to really want to learn how to let go of? I mean, there are deeper reasons we come here. It's not all fluff here. It's a pretty tough place to be. And some people have some
I know.
really, I know everybody on this panel knows how tough this place is. We all look like fluff, but there's no fluff piece here.
There's no such thing as fluff
No, there's no such thing
for
as
anybody. I mean, we all work through stuff.
Yeah, it's a constant working through stuff. So some people come in and they choose more difficult, even more difficult life paths to get over karmic situations, or to their soul really needed to learn about a certain item like forgiveness, or really had to learn acceptance, or really had to learn love, or really had to learn something along those ways, because our soul chooses something before we incarnate of what we want to learn. So some of the experiences that we're going to have here suck. They're going to be awful.
Yeah.
They're just going to be awful. And I'm sure on the other side, I warn people, no, don't do that. That's going to be too much for you. No. Don't do that one. Well, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
And so that's where you look at everybody. There's this thing in Vedic astrology called moksha. And I think it's really fascinating. It means spiritual liberation of this world. And how do you achieve that? That's always the question when you're dealing in Vedic astrology with moksha. So it's a spiritual liberation, meaning I don't have to come back in any more lifetimes again. How do you achieve that? And it really comes through the recognition that your enemies are your teachers. And what is the greatest thing you would have learned? And so the greatest things are often the most challenging lessons ever. I mean, life lessons are tough. Getting your PhD is tough. Life lessons are tougher.
Yeah.
You know, they just are.
It's important to notice what assumption you're making, you know, based on how this person reacted, and working through all those emotions. And once you get to a place where that's them, the question is, do I choose that or not? You know, then.
Yeah. And let me just say something before I forget, and then I want to read what Mary Lou has to say. So John, leave that on there. I just want to say before I forget, when there have been horrible things that people have done to you and they've passed, their soul, when they pass on the other side, they actually do what's called a life review. So let's say you were molested or whatever it happened to be. They're going to have to review all of that. And that's where their soul has the come to Jesus moment, if you will. And I'm not being Southern Baptist about it. It's going to be a real awakening. And so what you can do for the person who's had these situations and the person's already passed, start talking to them, start telling them, you did this to me and you did this to me, until you get it out of your system if you can, but just start telling them so they can listen, because they will be listening. Believe me, they hear everything you're saying. All right, so Mary Lou Lomax says, my husband had numerous affairs during our 27 years together. Oh man, that sucks. And I could never forgive him. I understand. I stayed with him because he was very sick and begged me not to leave him. So I didn't. I stayed and took care of him till he passed last year. Now I feel guilty because I couldn't forgive him before he passed. Oh, honey, what a human experience you had. Wow, right?
Yeah.
What a human experience. And you feel guilty because you couldn't forgive him?
On his timeline?
Yeah.
You know, can I pull out a Nana Lewism?
Yeah, that's my mother. Who was a psychologist.
Yeah, I met these two beauties.
Guilt is resentment turned inward. So sometimes something else that we sometimes don't allow ourselves to feel is anger, or we're not supposed to feel angry at those who have passed. We're not supposed to speak ill of the dead. Yeah. Guess what? You can. There's no rules.
Well, not only that, you should.
Yes. Feel your anger.
They're listening.
You couldn't forgive him on his timeline. Well, he couldn't do a lot of things on your timeline. So let's give yourself some space to feel angry at what he did. And you did this really human, beautiful thing of taking care of him, which you, for the record, did not have to do.
Mhm.
That's true. For the
Yeah.
record. That's true.
Absolutely. I like that. So you don't have to forgive, but just let go. Absolutely. You know, forgive doesn't mean we excuse the behavior. Frankly, he cheated on her for 27 years, and there are consequences to that, to the behavior that we choose to do. And the consequence may
Yeah.
be that you're pissing somebody off that
Yeah.
can't, you know, that
Or-
that isn't going to make it okay.
Yeah, maybe his consequence, his natural consequence, was that he did these really awful things and his wife was unable to forgive him. And, you know, he had to live and die with that. And that's his cross to bear.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's important to, what really helps me is to know that that person, that's who they are.
Yeah.
And that's what helps me once I've worked through the anger that it makes me. You know, we're a species that needs to tell stories, that needs to make sense of stuff by telling stories. That's why we'll sit and ponder for hours and days and weeks and years even. How could they have done that? What were they? And we'll sit there for hours. And so, you know, what I've learned and what we've all learned as psychologists, and what I always try to teach people, is sometimes a personality disorder, that's who they are, that's how they're going to be, and it makes no sense. So the more we try to make sense of it, the more stressed out we're going to be.
Mhm.
So I've learned to let that piece go. But even if someone isn't that, or we can't determine whether they're that or not, if someone does something egregious, that's their stuff.
Yeah.
And part of what helps me once I work through my anger is to give it back to them, not take it on as my own thing, and understand what assumptions I'm making, you know, if I'm making any. So Lynn says, just because the offensive person has passed, it doesn't change the history of what they intentionally created. It's true.
Right on.
Not to get stuck in a corner, but the other thing that Nana Lou used to say, the great psychologist, about cheating, is that you have to be mature enough to cheat. If you're going to cheat, you have to be mature enough to do it. And that means A, not getting caught, and B, not forcing the other person to forgive you for your actions.
Right. Well, I think in a roundabout way, we can say, you know, you have to be mature enough to deal with the consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means not being able to forgive someone,
Mm-hmm.
or not even
Yeah.
being able to accept it. I think wherever we fall on the forgiveness to acceptance timeline, it's really about, how do you want to hold that anger? What do you want to do with the anger piece? And if you can work through that anger, it's going to make you bigger, better, stronger.
Yeah. And Lynn says, as I know, even in the spirit world, they don't gain insight themselves. That's true.
Instant
I mean, it's not instant insight. No, I mean, when you cross over, you're the same person. So if you were a jerk here, moment you get there, you're still a jerk. It's not like, woo, everything is so amazing now. No, you still have to work through things. You still have to have those moments of clarity of what happened. What did you do while you were there? Oh, you did that? Well, let's talk about that. There's no getting away from something. It's you're going to be cornered.
Yeah.
Interesting way to view things.
Cece says, I want to pray for my enemies, but don't know how to because I'm just so angry. It depends on what you mean by praying. And if you're angry, I think that's an important place to start, is working through your own anger. And if you want to be able to pray then for your enemies, that's the goal. Just like forgiveness or acceptance is a goal. But it's so important to validate and have compassion for the self, and validate what you're feeling and how that behavior caused you to feel, and what it brought up and what it's triggering and all that stuff before reaching the goal.
And allowing yourself to be angry. Maybe that's just where you are right now. Sometimes we focus so much on this forward goal of acceptance that we fail to really recognize and appreciate the time that we need to spend just feeling our feelings.
Exactly. And how we work through it somatically, and you know this, Holiday, is you imagine how you would have liked to react to what they did in any way, shape, or form, in the most raw form. So even if the person is passed on, it's an important thing to work through. Would you have liked to, in the case of, the husband, kick him in the balls? So imagine, really, it's not that you would do that. It's not who we are. It's that anger. It's that impulse. It's that primitive impulse of the fight or flight that gets stuck, and that needs to be worked through. Absolutely needs to be worked through. And you'll notice your body releasing if you can really picture it. I've had people, picture skinning someone, because what they had done was so egregious. And that was a metaphor for how much rage there was in there. And then all of a sudden you see that kind of letting go. It's such an important process, and people are very afraid to do that. And I'm, certainly would suggest that you work with it in therapy, but it's an important part of the process.
Yeah.
Wow. Most aggravating for me, Elizabeth says, my mother is still alive. I rarely talk to her, but she says she doesn't understand why 4 out of her 5 kids want nothing to do with her. My jaw just hits the floor. That's frustrating because I'm not going to get that sorry I'm looking for. When she dies, she leaves me that suitcase of crap from hell. Oh, Elizabeth, I can so relate to this.
Mm.
Oh, my goodness. Well,
what do you
go
say,
ahead.
Cal? Go ahead.
I
Spiritual standpoint.
Well, probably a personality disorder. I mean,
Yeah.
I know we're not supposed to diagnose, but when you have 4 out of the 5, I mean, yes, that makes sense, Elizabeth, totally. It's really tough
Yeah.
when you are working with a mother or a father or a sibling that is or a good friend that is a personality disorder. They can't understand or even have the ability actually to know that they've done anything wrong, that there's nothing the matter with them. It's you. And it's once I got a hold of personality disorders, I could handle a lot. It's not necessarily about forgiving, but it gave me a different lens to view this. And
Well, I think it's an understanding, and it also makes it a little easier to walk away. It's almost like, if you view them like a snake, would you keep walking into that snake pit and let yourself be bit? Why would you do that? It's no different than a physical ailment. Would you keep walking into a room with someone with tuberculosis? You wouldn't, because you'd be protecting yourself. So you have to view it in that same way. And before we go off on what that person said, even if your mother was able to say, I'm sorry, I am so, so sorry for everything I did, it would only help the relationship in the present and moving forward. It would not take away the pain and the wound past. That's an important piece to realize, particularly for people who have an issue with someone who's passed on. Even if they said, I'm sorry, it wouldn't heal that, because the damage was already done. It's those wounds are already there. And that's an important process to deal with in therapy. It's not going to make a difference. It'll make a difference for the current relationship. If you can own your stuff, well, then we have something to talk about, and I can change the relationship with you currently. But it won't erase the past, and people really need to understand that and know that.
And letting go of the hope that they're going to get it. It's really
That's huge. Yeah.
Because they're not.
Oh, I spent years thinking that certain people would get it, but they never did.
And sometimes you have these moments where you think they do get it, and then you feel really good about it and everything's great, and then Lucy with the football comes in, and they don't.
And the behavior doesn't change.
Yeah.
Right. So that's an important thing to notice too, and make your decision whether you're going to continue to have any kind of interaction with them or not.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Wow.
It's a very kind of heavy topic, and I think there's
Tis the season.
Right, exactly, right. Yeah. Tis the season of a lot of family triggering. You see, Carol says that's what my sister is. She feels like the innocent one. Yeah. And that's very difficult to come to terms with. And again, narcissist. Yeah. Again, forgiving or acceptance is not saying that their behavior is okay. It's just working through the anger that it brings up in yourself, being able to accept them for who they are and decide, I don't want to have anything to do with them, but you're able to then move on.
Mm-hmm. So Jessica says, I was able to accept years of verbal abuse because my husband had grown up with this kind of abuse, and I felt Didn't know any better. After I summoned up the courage to leave him, the feeling of freedom was incredible. Right on. After he passed, I revisited the horrible way he made me feel and was finally able to forgive him because it was his insecurities that drove him. Amazing feeling at long last. Wow, Jessica, am I
Wow.
impressed?
Thank you for sharing that.
Wow,
Beautiful.
that's beautiful.
Yeah. And I think
Wow.
that, that's an important distinction too. Just because we can understand where someone is coming from, most of the time, if not every time, if someone is, I'm just going to call it spade a spade, if someone's an asshole, there's a reason for it. We're not born assholes.
Yeah.
I really don't believe that. And so they've had some trauma, unresolved trauma from their past. That doesn't excuse the behavior, and that doesn't mean that I have to accept it. So
And-
there's two very different things.
And
But it would make it easier to forgive down the line after you've processed a lot of it.
Oh, absolutely.
But to play off of both of these things, recognizing the following: your level of acceptance is going to change year from year and experience to experience. We're onions. We have many layers. So we may come to this place where we feel we've accepted, we feel good about it, we're in a good place. And then 2, 3, 4 years later, new things come up.
Yeah.
Or something new gets triggered deeper.
Yes,
that we have to
deeper.
work
Yeah.
through.
And so there's a
Absolutely.
deeper release.
Mhm.
And sometimes, again, that doesn't mean we're not going to have any feelings. Feelings are very different than accepting or forgiving. A holiday comes around, and maybe with that person that you've decided not to talk to because they did something awful, you used to do something special with them. And so that will bring up feelings of, maybe sadness or disappointment or even anger again. Those feelings don't mean that you have to react in action with it. That doesn't mean you have to pick up the phone and talk to them. You can just notice those feelings, validate them, and continue to move forward. That doesn't mean that you have to try and reach out or call them. We're emotional beings. We are going to have feelings about stuff like that. And some, especially, the holidays or a birthday or something like that can always bring up triggers.
And if you feel like you've forgiven someone and then something happens and a deeper layer is exposed and you're suddenly very angry again, you're not a failure
Right.
for no longer being able to forgive or accept. That's just part of the human process.
Oh yeah, it's just a new feeling.
Totally.
It's accepting whatever is. That's at the core of mindfulness meditation. It's just accepting what is. I remember it was this guy who teaches it. It was the head of mindful meditation at USC. He's this real kind of nebbishy, guy with little glasses and curly hair and stuff. And he took us through a meditation, and I'm noticing that I'm getting unbelievably anxious. And I'm like, so I'm judging myself, and I'm like, fuck, I'm supposed to feel relaxed. I'm not supposed to feel agitated. We're supposed to be relaxed. So he says, and notice what you're feeling in the moment, and ask yourself, can I be okay with what I'm noticing in this moment? And I thought to myself, no, I fucking can't. I'm feeling anxious. I'm supposed to be relaxed. And then he says, and if the answer is no, ask yourself, can I be okay with not being okay with what I'm noticing in this moment? So ultimately, it's just being okay with what's happening, even if you're not okay with what you're noticing. So to your point, Holiday, if you have emotions that bring up and you think, God, I thought I had dealt with all of that. It's just what's coming up in that moment. And if you view it with curiosity, you can, explore why that emotion's coming up, even though you thought you did all the work.
Right. Well, we are here having this spiritual experience to constantly grow and evolve. So there will always be an antagonist. There'll always be somebody that comes in.
I say, bring it on.
Oh no, I don't say that anymore, Cheryl.
No.
Nope. Don't say that. No.
Oh, if someone's going to do it.
But you can, so
Yeah.
an interesting way of looking at this is the same word in Japanese for trauma is the same word for opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So really?
So you can look at something as it's not trauma. What is it? Oh Lord, sorry. Postpartum brain. My brain is just like.
Holiday just had a baby a few weeks ago, everybody.
Yay.
Yay. She's so
She's
cute.
the best. Basically, you can look at something as this really negative experience, or you can look at it as an opportunity for growth.
Well, and that's
Absolutely.
spiritually what we do. So every one of these deep, horrible, awful experience, your soul's learning and growing. What do you want to make? What choice
And-
do you want to make about it?
Yeah.
And to use an acronym that a very special person in my life taught me, you can look at these things as an AFOG, another fucking opportunity for growth.
There you go, an AFOG. Well, in spirituality, we don't call them AFOGs, but that's what they are.
I love that. That is
Isn't
so
that a great
funny.
one?
I'm going to start using that. John, can you look up? I know exactly what you're talking about, Holiday. Dr. Peter Levine always talks about that. There's a Japanese proverb where, if a pottery falls, when you glue it back together, they fill it with gold to show that, the break or the
Oh.
traumatic memory can actually make you more beautiful. And I think I would find it myself, John, but I don't know how to post it on our page. And I know you're a whiz with that, but if you just look up Japanese proverb, pottery or something like that, it'll show up. And it's such a beautiful saying. And I think that's what you were referring to, Holiday.
No.
Let's see, is John with us?
Yeah,
Oh,
I don't know where he is, but he's there.
maybe John had to leave. Well, we'll put it up on our Facebook page for
Yeah,
sure.
we'll find that. Well,
Crisis. The same word for crisis is the same word for opportunity. Haha.
there you go, John.
There you go, John. You're a dear. Thank you.
Oh, wow. That's fascinating. Oh, well.
But you can see something as a crisis, or you can see something as an opportunity. And if you look at it from an opportunity perspective,
Yeah.
the idea of forgiveness is an interesting opportunity for growth.
And yes, ladies, I'm here. Hopefully you hear me okay.
Yes, you do.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Yes. This
Thanks.
is a great show. Everyone is just loving every minute of it. So we've got a lot of wonderful comments coming through. We've got comments from Jessica saying, great shows, ladies. Thank you so much for doing it. Julie is saying, best show ever tonight. Thank you, ladies.
Aw, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Let's see. Carol says the shit rears its ugly head over and over at the most inoperative time.
Carol,
I love that gal.
But it's an
you're
opportunity for growth.
absolutely right.
Totally.
It is.
Lynn
And
says
sometimes,
behind
Rob,
every shadow is a gift. Sorry,
Yeah.
Shirley.
Yep. And every shadow. Boy, that's a good one, Lynn.
it's so funny because I say that so many times with my patients. It's like, use it as an opportunity. And so they'll say, yeah, an opportunity, fuck you, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
And it's
another
true.
king
Sometimes
opportunity
it's
for growth.
Absolutely.
I know. Well, as I always tell you, I mean this, we all wanted to be here. And if you can actually make your lens even wider, instead of myopically about forgive, forget about that. Make your lens wider. Why did I come here? And ask yourself, what are you learning? What did
What
you
is-
learn? What did this experience teach you about humanity? I mean, there are people that are just bad people.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there's
And-
souls that are very low vibration.
And the lesson could be boundaries. More often
Could
than
be
not,
boundaries.
Mhm.
people who have a difficulty with boundaries will
Yeah.
come up against someone who crosses them,
Mhm.
And then allowing yourself to come from a place of compassion will give you some space. You can look at them as a human being, and you can see digging in your well of compassion all the way to China
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
compassion towards them, and you can feel sorry for them that they are coming from this place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And compassion for yourself too, to work through what it brings up in you.
Yes,
Yeah.
self-compassion, huge.
Yeah.
And our
Aaron
audience is
says, Dr.
loving you.
Holiday, you were so cool.
Yes.
Yes,
We got
you are.
another one right here.
Totally, she is.
There we go. Let's see what Shar saying as well. Love the perspective, Dr. Holiday. Such a great show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Holiday, for being on this show.
Thank you so
sweetheart.
much for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh my God. It was so wonderful. It was great.
Yes, you have to
see
come
you.
back and join us again.
Oh, absolutely.
Definitely. Thank you very much. All right, I'll see you all later.
Bye, Holiday.
All
Love
right.
you.
Thanks,
Love
Holiday.
you. Bye.
Take care.
I love you.
And thanks everybody for listening, watching, whatever you're doing at this moment. We thank you. And we want you to join our Both Sides Now TV community. That's our support group. You can join by going to Both Sides Now TV, the show page, clicking on visit group, and then join the group. And that's where we post a lot of content.
And we also, John, everybody can go to our bothsidesnowtv.com. And if they're interested, we have our webinars up there.
cool.
We have personality disorders, on attachment, and on surviving suicide.
Excellent. All right. Just
Yeah.
in time for Cyber Monday.
Oh, we should have done
right.
that for Cyber Monday. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
All
look
right.
at this. Julie says you made a great kid, Kelly.
Oh, thank you. I
Aw.
really did. I only had
That-
one, but I put everything into that one.
And it shows. She
Thank
is so
you.
wonderful.
A whole
She's
family of
great.
psychologists here. Or mental health
Unbelievable.
therapists.
Well,
Yep.
and
Three
this is a
generations.
weird statement. Holiday's father was a psychologist.
Oh,
How
there
weird
you
is that?
go.
Yeah. So it really, the whole gamut, everybody's a therapist. When you come in with wounds and trauma, I'm going to tell you the best thing to do, be a therapist. It's
So
the truth.
true.
It's
I
the
know.
truth.
I can attest to that. So, anyways, thank you everyone
Thank
for
you,
watching,
John.
and thank you so much, John. And we
Oh,
will
my
see
pleasure.
everyone next week.
All right. So hopefully you guys can hear the outro. If not, we will see you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Take care, everybody.